Hello, everyone. My name is Clifton Pope. I am an ISA certified personal trainer, nutritionist, exercise transformation specialist, and strength and conditioning coach. And I am also the founder and CEO of my own personal business, brand, and company called Health Fitness Wealth Business Incorporated. And today you are officially about to tune in to my newest course, part of the HFWB courses that I offer. It's called Mastering Consistent Action, Cultivate Urgency for Maximum Productivity. And this is basically based off of my recent self help book that I wrote 2 years ago, 3 years ago, back in 2023, 2024 range, called Consistency with a Sense of Urgency, which you can get on Amazon.com as we speak. And the overall course title, again, Mastering Consistent Action, Cultivate Urgency for Maximum Productivity. Now, the whole objective and course overview you're going to get out of this experience is this course is basically designed to empower individuals to sustain consistent actions and harness a potential sense of urgency to boost productivity and achieve goals efficiently. And you're going to understand the psychological and practical tools to develop consistency, learn techniques to instill a sense of urgency without causing burnout. And you're going to apply these strategies in daily life to enhance personal and professional productivity. A lot of people know me for being very, very consistent, so I figured now is the time more than ever to bring to you not only the beginning stages with my book Consistency with a Sense of Urgency. This was the first step in showing people on how I remain consistent and committed to all the things that I do. Now we're going to follow it up with the official course for consistency, Mastering Consistent Action, Cultivate Urgency for Maximum Productivity. And then of course it's designed to empower individuals to sustain consistent actions based off of their commitment with their vision, mission, their goals, their sense of purpose in life, and harness that potential sense of urgency to boost productivity and achieve goals efficiently. So stay tuned. We're about to dive into some modules here. I thank y'all for tuning in, and let's enjoy the ride together, and let's remain committed and consistent with a sense of urgency. See y'all on the next module. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to the first module of the course titled Mastering Consistent Action, Cultivate Urgency for Maximum Productivity. And we're going to dive into this first module, which is based off of like the introduction to consistency and urgency, breaking down those two words in particular. And we're going to dive into this first couple of lessons as far as what is consistency and urgency versus stress. Now, let's dive into the first lesson now, shall we? Well, what is consistency? And let's understand why consistency matters. Because when you think of consistency, it basically comes down to the cornerstone of meaningful and lasting growth. Why does it matter when it comes to self-improvement? Well, it's the practice of repeated intentional effort towards a specific goal. It bridges the gap between desire, what it is that you're trying to do, and achievement, accomplishing something that it is that you set out to do. And with that being done, it creates momentum and reinforces discipline, which is a very key factor on remaining consistent, without a doubt. And unlike bursts of effort driven by fleeting motivation, right? Consistent actions compound over time. It's like planting that seed and allowing it to harvest and allowing it to grow. That way you can reap what it is you sow, right? It's kind of like producing those incremental gains that ultimately lead to significant transformation. I tell my clients this all the time. You got to appreciate, the small stepping stones and the milestone achievements along the way within the journey, because once you get to the end of the journey and once you reach the destination, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be asking yourself, is there more to it? Which is why we got to appreciate those small steps and we got to appreciate those milestone achievements. We got to appreciate those incremental gains that ultimately lead to significant transformations. Small, deliberate steps taken daily are far more powerful than occasional intense efforts. Here's a good example of this. How many of y'all tried to learn a new language before? A person who studies for 20 minutes every single day will achieve far greater mastery than someone who studies for hours sporadically. Just let that sink in for a little bit, because the culminative effect of a consistent practice builds a foundation of knowledge that grows stronger with time. Similarly, other self improvement efforts, whether related to, physical fitness, personal finance, or emotional well being, relying on sustained action for lasting success. Going back to the physical fitness aspect of it, you can't just do one workout and then thinking, oh, I'm going to achieve the results that I'm going to achieve within one workout. No, it doesn't work like that. You got to remain committed to it, which is the first 50% of it. And then the other 50%, you got to be consistent with it. Meaning, you got to do the same thing over and over and over again and find new ways to do the exact same thing. And you still got to do it even when you don't feel like doing it. That is where real consistency takes place, without a doubt. Now, going back to the daily small wins, how consistency can basically create big results. One of the most impactful aspects of consistency is its relationship with small wins, which small accomplishments may seem insignificant, but they have a profound psychological effect on you. Celebrating small victories boosts motivation and reinforces positive behavior. According to a blog from Harvard Summer School, recognizing small wins is essential for maintaining momentum and building confidence, right? Each minor success acts as a stepping stone, like I mentioned earlier, towards larger achievements, reminding us that progress is possible even when the major milestones seem far away. Now, this is from a Harvard Summer School blog that was written back in 2022 that states this. And it goes back to basically explaining how by focusing on consistent actions that generate those small wins, right, individuals create a positive feedback loop. Completing one workout, reading one chapter of a book, or choosing a healthy meal are all examples of small actions that contribute to larger goals, like reading a book by the end of the month, or achieving a certain weight loss goal or a certain muscle gain goal within, I don't know, 3 to 6 months, a year maybe. Or celebrating these small wins provide that sense of accomplishment and motivation to keep going, ultimately strengthening your consistency. Now, I get it. Life can get in the way, and that causes us to fall off as far as being consistent and all those things. So let's look at it like this. Another key benefit of consistency is measurable progress. Regular effort provides data points that allows you to evaluate what works and what doesn't, kind of like what I talk about in my book, Consistency with a Sense of Urgency. Here's a good example of this. A person tracking their workouts or studying habits can identify areas for improvement and fine-tune their strategies. So consistent tracking and reflection enhances self-awareness, enabling smarter decisions and more effective self-improvement strategies. That's very key. That way we can form those habits of success, which is the foundation of self-improvement. Every repeated action strengthens neural pathways, making behaviors more automatic. For instance, consistently dedicating time to journaling or meditation turns these practices into habits, something that I personally do every single morning, to the point to where if you're not doing exactly that, something feels out of place and it doesn't feel right, for instance. That's a good way to look at it. Now, it requires less willpower over time because you're so used to doing it. And then when you start small and you commit to just 5 minutes of towards your goal each day, whether it's reading, working out, meditation, eating healthy, all those things, These positive habits become a part of your identity, making personal growth feel more natural and sustainable, which builds self trust. When you commit to a plan and follow through, you reinforce the belief that you are capable of achieving your goals. Trust in yourself to show up regularly, even when progress feels slow. Now, cultivates resilience and mental fortitude. That's what that builds, right? Now, this self confidence, it leads you to empowering yourself to stay the course even when the challenges arise because you have proven your ability to persist. Now, that's something to think about as far as, consistency, as far as maintaining that consistency within a sense of urgency and why it truly matters for the most part. Now, speaking of urgency, I want to touch on this briefly as far as, the second part of this first lesson, which is urgency versus stress. Now, we're going to distinguish productive urgency from destructive stress real quick. Now, studies distinguish productive urgency from destructive stress by identifying that the former is a drive to achieve goals, often tied to EU stress, while the latter is linked to maladaptive behaviors driven by negative emotions like fear and anxiety, right? That's known as distress. Productive urgency is associated with positive outcomes like innovation and high performance when coupled with support and a sense of purpose. Like, you know what it is that you got to do and you know what you have to do to get it done. It's just developing, that sense of purpose on why you want to do it, how you want to do it, all those type of things, right? Now, that's the key. That's productive urgency. Now, destructive stress, on the other hand, is characterized by a lack of emotional regulation that leads to poor decision making, decreased creativity, and risk taking behavior in an attempt to escape negative feelings, which is what a lot of people are currently doing, which is why we need to separate the two as far as destructive stress, productive urgency, and we just got to kind of meet in the middle. That way we can maintain those healthier habits of consistency. That way we can do it with a slight sense of urgency and putting the things that we know that we need to do on the top of the list and figuring out those small sustainable steps to get you towards that success to where you can check that off the list. That therefore remaining committed, remaining consistent, and having it done with a slight sense of urgency. That's something to think about as far as, the introduction to consistency and urgency. What is consistency? Understanding why it matters. And most importantly, distinguishing productive urgency from destructive stress. That is the first step right there towards maintaining consistency with a sense of urgency. And that is the secret behind lasting self-improvement, becoming the best version of yourself that you can be from a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual standpoint. That is the key right there for sure. Stay tuned for the next module as we're going to go a little bit more deeper into the mindset and the motivation on how to remain consistent with a sense of urgency. I thank y'all for tuning in to module number 1, Introduction to Consistency and Urgency, and Urgency versus Stress. Thank y'all once again. See y'all on the second module. Peace. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the second module of Mastering Consistent Action, Cultivating Urgency for Maximum Productivity. This is your host and instructor, HFWB CEO Clifton Pope here. And in this second module, we're going to dive a little bit more into the mindset and the motivation of things. In the previous module, we talked about the introduction to consistency and urgency. What is consistency? Why it matters? And distinguishing productive urgency from destructive stress. Now we're going to dive into the mindset and the motivation, cultivating the right mindset, developing a mindset conducive to consistency, which is the lesson 2.1 in the mindset and motivation module that we're about to break down. And I've talked about this before in my previous episodes of the HFWB podcast series as far as, the importance of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset within the mind, body, and spirit. So that's kind of where we're going at with this. And it comes down to research that was done at Stanford University by a professor by the name of Miss Carol Dweck, where she talks about this in her book, Mindset, the New Psychology of Success, which was published back in 2006. And here's is what Carol Dweck's studies breaks down when it comes to growth mindset and fixed mindset. Now, a growth mindset simply states as a learner belief that their intelligence can expand and develop. In contrast, fixed mindset is a learner's belief that their intelligence is a fixed, immutable trait. Now, Miss Carol Dweck, the Stanford professor who published this research here, she goes a little bit more deeper into it by explaining that studies show that students with a growth mindset consistently outperform students with a fixed mindset. As discussed in their paper on academic tenacity, Ms. Carol Dweck and colleagues have found that a central factor in a student's academic resilience and learning is their mindset about intelligence, right? Now, students may view intelligence as a fixed quantity that they either possess or do not possess, a fixed mindset, or as a malleable quantity that can be increased with effort and learning, a growth mindset. Basically, students with a fixed mindset believe that their intellectual abilities is a limited quantity and tend to worry about proving their intelligence rather than improving it. This can lead in the face of challenges and setbacks. It could lead to negative thoughts, feelings, and behaviors like thinking one is dumb and feeling discouraged or incapable, or simply just giving up. They're fixed on whatever it is that their conditions going on within their mind, body, and spirit, that where they feel like they're a victim and that there's nothing they could do about it, and it's like their fate or destiny or something, which is far from the case, because in this same study that Miss Carol Dweck talks about, students with a growth mindset will often see challenges or setbacks as an opportunity to learn. As a result, they respond with constructive thoughts. Maybe I need to change my strategy. Maybe I need to make this adjustment here and that adjustment there. Or I just need to try harder with my overall effort. And, it's that feeling of such a thrill to where they want to know if it's real or not, or a challenge that they're willing to accept head on and seeing how they're going to overcome it. And it's that behavior that they adapt within those things that allows them to remain persistent. I look at fixed mindset and a growth mindset like this. A fixed mindset is basically looking at everything wrong with the situation and basically playing the victim mentality, saying that I can't do it, I will never be able to reach this level or this magnitude, and just accepting it as fate and destiny. Versus a growth mindset, it kind of goes back to one of my personal favorite philosophies that I go by based on the late great Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, Mamba mentality. Figuring out a way on how you can become the best version of yourself that you can be every single day from a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual standpoint. And that is where real growth takes place. And that kind of ties into your overall inner motivation on why it is that you're doing exactly what you're doing in the first place. You got to have some sort of inner motivation technique that keeps you empowered, uplifted, and inspired. For instance, for me, I always look at my self-care practice as establishing all those things, especially whenever I'm doing my journal entry. I always like to write down, of course, what it is that I'm grateful for and what it is that I plan on accomplishing, which it kind of reminds me on why it is that I'm doing everything that I'm doing in the first place. So you got to find your why first and foremost, and you got to keep that personal why very close to you. That way it can give you a sense of reminder of why you started your overall journey in the first place. I'm going to just use the fitness example since I am an ISA certified personal trainer. Look at it like this. Think about why you started your fitness journey. Are you doing it for health? Are you doing it for strength? Are you doing it for competition? Because regardless, that motivation is going to rekindle your drive every single time. And when you understand the inner motivation techniques that help you establish your personal why and keep it like that, and then once you cultivate the right mindset that's conductive to consistency, then we get to move into the next phase, which is setting up those SMART goals, right? Creating those inspiring yet actionable goals. Because SMART is basically an acronym for goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Now, this framework helps you set clear, actionable objectives that are more likely to be achieved, which comes with the structure for planning and tracking progress. Let's start with the S, specific. The goal is clear and well defined. You know what it is that you want to do and all those type of things, and you're answering the who, what, and the why. Measurable. Track your progress. Know when you've successfully met the goal. Kind of, keeping track of every stepping stone that you take, because it is going to as a step-by-step process, and you got to trust that process as you make progress. For example, you got to understand if the goal's achievable. You got to understand if the goal is realistic and attainable with your current resources and skills. Don't say, for example, you want to make $1 million in 6 months to a year. Unless you feel like you really can do it and it's achievable and attainable based on your situation, by all means go for it. If it's not, let's start small, build ourselves up a little bit. Crawl before you walk before you run before you sprint, that kind of thing. You got to make sure the goal is relevant. You got to make sure it aligns with broader objectives and priorities. You got to make sure it aligns with who you are, what you are about, what you represent, and what your vision, mission, and sense of purpose is. And of course, it has to be time bound. You have to have a specific deadline and time frame, which creates a sense of urgency. That way you don't procrastinate, and you tell yourself, again, going back to that weightlifting fitness journey I was talking about. Say I want to lose 20 pounds in a matter of 3 months or something like that, Give yourself a reason to continue to work towards improving your general health and your overall well-being, because you want to get it done by a specific time frame. That is the power of SMART goals. You got to make sure your goals are specific, measurable, achievable, time-bound, and relevant for that exact example. Or specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound to spell out the word SMART. That way we could work smarter, not harder, towards achieving our overall goals. That way we can work smarter, not harder, by achieving those inner motivation techniques and finding and keeping your personal why. That way we can work smarter, not harder, towards cultivating the right mindset that's conducive to consistency. And that right there is how you maintain the right mindset that can be trained properly, that allows your body to follow through with as much discipline and motivation sprinkled on top of it as possible. So next module, we're going to get into the skills and habits for consistency, kind of dive into that a little bit more in particular, because habits are the key to where we can establish consistency with a sense of urgency. You'll see what I'm talking about in the next module. I thank y'all once again for listening to module number 2, Mindset and Motivation, part of the course title, Consistent action, cultivate urgency for maximum productivity. See you on the next module, y'all. Peace. What's going on, everybody? It's your HFWB CEO Clifton Pope here, and we are diving into the third official module for the course title, Mastering Consistent Action, Cultivating Urgency for Maximum Productivity. And again, the third module we're going to be diving into, like I explained at the end of the previous module, is skills and habits for consistency. We're going to dive into the science of habit formation, the psychology of habit building. Now, studies show that habit formation is a process of associative learning driven by repetition and consistent context, creating automatic behaviors via the habit loop of cue, routine, and reward. Now, that same research highlights that consistency is key, though the time needed to form a habit, it varies within the individual, with the average of around 66 days of reported for simple new habits, but can range significantly based on the individual and how quickly they grasp on to developing these new habits, right? Now, psychological theories suggest that the basal ganglia are key in automating these new behaviors. And for those who don't know what that is, that's basically the group of subcortical nuclei located deep within the brain, primarily involved in motor control, motor learning, and executive functions. It's like the gatekeeper mechanism, helping to initiate desired movements while inhibiting unwanted ones. That's kind of something to think about when it comes to just overall the importance of what the basal ganglia is to automating these new behaviors, these new habits that need to be formed, and all those things. And to dive a little bit more deeper into the science, there was a study that was done by the National Library of Medicine that was published back in 2012 that I found very interesting. It's called Making Health Habitual: The Psychology of Habit Formation and General Practice. And there's one particular note that kind of stuck out to me the most within this research, where it talks about how decades of psychological research consistently show that mere repetition of a simple action in a consistent context leads through associative learning to the action being activated upon subsequent exposure to those contextual cues, that is habitually. To put it in simpler terms for those who are looking at this module, basically when you do the same, when you form a new habit and you practice it over and over and over again, even when you don't feel like doing it, it's something that cues within your subconscious to where it's like it's rewiring all those old patterns that were going on within you, and it's getting adjusted and implemented to all of these new patterns that are forming within you. It's kind of like, whenever you first learn how to drive a car back in driver's ed, and you got to learn all the basics as far as how to drive a car, starting a car, learn the basic park, reverse, neutral, drive, all those type of things. The more you do it and the more you practice it, you develop these new habits based off the practice that you put in, and then it becomes secondhand nature. Because when you've been driving a car for multiple years and you're so used to it, you don't even think about it, you just naturally do it. That same effort and anticipation can be applied to how we can continue to remain consistent within our vision and our mission and our overall sense of purpose. And it's like we develop like this brand new routine within us that kind of stick within us. And we all need a little bit of a routine that naturally sticks within us, like a routine that I utilize, for example, that allows me to remain as committed and consistent as possible. I usually recommend everybody read The Miracle Morning by Al Harad, which I call the blueprint on how you can put together your own self-care routine that allows you to be the best version of yourself that you could be on a regular basis. And it talks about a method called the Savers Method, which is silence, moment of silence, whether it's prayer, meditation, breath work, or a combination of all three. Affirmations, speaking whatever it is that you want to put out into the universe towards the Most High God, to where it comes back to you naturally in due time. And then visualizing it, kind of like imagining what it is that you want to see and get done. It's like they say in the Bible, the way to the kingdom of heaven is through the mind of a child. And what do children do well? They imagine very well. They utilize their imagination, which when you utilize your imagination, you kick off the manifestation process to where you could literally visualize all the things that you're seeing within your imagination, the power of visualization. Of course, exercise. Movement is medicine. Moving your body for 30 minutes a day. That's all you need to increase your oxygen and your blood flow throughout your whole entire body from head to toe. Reading, whatever favorite material you like to read on a regular basis every single day, even if it's just for 5 to 10 minutes, even if it's just a page or a chapter, etc. And of course, scribing, journaling. I say all of that to say that's an example of a daily ritual and a daily routine that you can incorporate into your practice that will allow you to understand the basic steps of commitment and consistency, because you're forming a new habit within this self-care routine to where it allows you to check in with yourself, take care of yourself by establishing the peace, love, and joy necessary that will allow you to be productive, make the most out of every single day, and utilize your time wisely, whatever the world and life throws at you on a regular basis. So that's kind of something to think about. And I get it, one thing that kills habits on a regular basis, and I'm guilty of this, procrastination. Procrastination is something, let me tell you. We gotta first and foremost be aware of why we're procrastination and how it serves us within our life. We can't come up with an effective solution if we don't understand the root of the problem. And it comes down to just, awareness, self knowledge are the keys to figuring out how to stop procrastinating, which can kill any chances of forming any kind of habits whatsoever. Because when you think of procrastination, some procrastinate because they're lazy, other claims that they do better when they procrastinate, others claim they work best whenever they're under the pressure, which is fine in all those things. But why put yourself in that situation to when you can just form the necessary habits and take advantage of that time management, right? Utilize your time wisely, put together one piece of a puzzle at the time. For example, making a huge list of things to do or scheduling every minute of your day. That's one way that can increase your stress and probably procrastinate more often. But the key to basically overcoming procrastination is that you got to stay motivated for productive reasons. And when you stay motivated for productive reasons, you tend to learn and achieve in a way that leads to like positive, productive, and satisfying feelings in action. It's kind of like, it's in contrast of engaging in a task out of fear of failing or not making your parents angry or not looking stupid or doing better than other people to show off. They're all reasons, powerful ones for doing something, but they're not productive since they invoke maladaptive, which goes back to the negative feelings and actions that I talked about. For example, if you're concerned with not looking dumb, like I talked about in the last module, you may not ask questions. You may delve into new areas, or you may try new methods, and you may take the risks necessary to learn new things and reach new heights. And that's a good way to put positive motives into action that will help help you focus more on your goals. Writing down and identifying your personal reasons, for example, enrolling in that course or monitoring your progress towards your goals using like a goal setting chart. That's one thing you can do. You have to stay motivated by being active to be engaged, so, and all those type of things as well. So really when it comes down to, as far as overcoming procrastination, it comes down to awareness. Reflect on the reasons why you procrastinate, your habits, your thoughts that lead to the procrastination. You got to assess the situation. What feelings lead to procrastination and how does it make you feel? Are these positive, productive feelings, and do you want to change them? You got to look at the overall outlook, the big picture, right? You got to alter your perspective, looking at a big task in terms of smaller pieces, making it less intimidating, and look for what's appealing about or what you want to get out of the assignment beyond just the grade, especially for the students in school. Most importantly, you got to commit. You got to, in order to, if you feel stuck, start by simply committing to a small task, any task, and write it down. Finish it and reward yourself. Write it down on your schedule or to-do list. And only for what you can completely commit to, and if you write it down, follow through no matter what. By doing so, you will slowly rebuild trust in yourself that you really do what you say you will do, which so many procrastinators have lost. You got to pay attention to your surroundings. You got to be realistic. You got to accomplish your goals, all those type of things. Those are just keys on how you can kind of overcome the procrastination and understanding it first and foremost. That way you can overcome that procrastination simply to begin with. And that right there is the key I feel like, on how we could form better habits of success to where we can establish our vision, mission, and sense of purpose on what it is that we're trying to do. And it goes back to the importance of understanding why consistency truly matters. So that's something to think about as far as, the science behind it, breaking down the science behind forming habits and the psychology of habit building, all of those things. So something to think about. And we'll talk a little bit more about, cultivating that sense of urgency within the next module. That way we can continue to remain committed and consistent towards whatever it is you're trying to accomplish based on the new habits that you form, based on the actions that you take, and based on the decisions that you make based on the systems that you're trying to establish of commitment, consistency, discipline, and motivation. We'll see you on the next module, y'all. Peace and love. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your HFWB CEO, Clifton Pope here. We're back with module number 4 to the course titled Mastering Consistent Action, Cultivating Urgency for Maximum Productivity. Now, I want to focus on that word, urgency, and how we can cultivate a sense of urgency, because it really comes down to 4 elements: prioritization, focus, action, and momentum. Now, according to this lesson on cultivating a sense of urgency, the 4 elements that contribute to creating and maintaining a sense of urgency are prioritization, focus, action, and momentum, like I just mentioned. And essentially, it means making basically deliberate choices about what's most important, staying focused on achieving that goal, taking active steps towards it, and keeping the progress going to achieve results efficiently. Now, here's an explanation of each element that I just mentioned. Let's start with prioritization, right? This involves identifying the most critical tasks or goals and allocating your time and resources accordingly. It requires making clear distinctions between what is urgent and what can wait, allowing for efficient use of time and energy. It's a good way to look at it. Moving on to focus. Once priorities are set, maintaining focus on achieving them is crucial. This involves eliminating distractions, minimizing multitasking, and staying on track with the chosen objectives. Then we take it to the action. Taking those concrete steps towards completing the prioritized task is essential for progress, of course. It means moving beyond planning and actually executing the necessary actions. And then that leads to momentum being established, maintaining a forward moving momentum, which is key to sustaining urgency. This involves continuously building upon progress, celebrating the small wins, and not letting setbacks derail the overall effort. And really, what that comes down to is pretty much creating like that time sensitive environment to where we can prioritize, to where we can remain focused, to where we can take action, to where we can build momentum off of this action the way I see it. And it really comes down to, again, creating that time sensitive environment, which is a key that will accelerate the action, and which involves like a delicate balance of psychological techniques and practical tools. And there is studies that show that moderate good stress, eustress, like I mentioned in the first module of this particular course, from urgency that can boost performance and focus, while excessive negative stress, the distress that I talked about earlier in the modules, can impair decision making and lead to burnout. So we got to look at it kind of like as far as just understanding what's important, what's urgent, what's important, not urgent, what's urgent, not important, and basically what's not important and what's not urgent. That way we can create that balance between good stress and bad stress, because the stress is going to be there. It's just a matter of how you manipulate it and utilize it to your advantage, to where, again, it will allow you the opportunity to not only achieve the deadline that you set for yourself, going back to the SMART goals, making sure things are time bound, right? That where you have like a specific deadline or time frame that creates that sense of urgency to begin with, like I talked about in the SMART goals. Accomplishing all of those things and just holding yourself accountable within the process of doing all those things, right? And there's actually some research that kind of backs it up as far as how we can focus on doing that. This is based off of a research I found from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which was put together by Mr. Dan Ariely, where he talks about procrastinations, deadlines, and performance self control by pre commitment. You could definitely look this up for yourself, but to kind of give a brief overview of what the general discussion was all about and the studies that were presented in there, it shows that people sometimes impose deadlines on themselves, even when missing these deadlines lead to penalties. And he kind of breaks down in a world without self control problems, such behavior would seem non normative. A rational decision maker with time consistent preferences would not impose constraints on his or her choices. But if people impulsively procrastinate and if they are aware of their procrastination problems, self imposing costly deadlines as a binding mechanism can be strategic and reasonable. In terms of the influence of deadlines on performance, it talks about in one of the studies how it demonstrates that self-imposed deadlines do not enhance performance as much as external imposed evenly spaced deadlines. And it shows within the second study that they conducted that performance under self-imposed deadlines is lower than performance under evenly spaced deadlines, but higher than under maximally delayed deadlines. Now, it all boils down to the question that they're asking within this study. Will people self-impose costly deadlines to overcome procrastination? Something to ask yourself. Are self-imposed deadlines effective in improving task performance? That's a good question. When setting self-imposed deadlines, do people set these deadlines optimally? And the answer, well, to the first two questions based on the research is yes. And the answer to that last question is no. And based on their findings, it demonstrates how people understand the value of binding themselves to overcome procrastination, even in the face of strong normative reasons for setting deadlines as late as possible. And basically, all the participants in this study showed some sophistication in their understanding of their own procrastination problems, but many did not set these deadlines to bind themselves optimally. It just happened naturally from what it talks about. Regardless, it comes down when you look at it as far as just from an overall cultivating a sense of urgency, it comes down to just what are your priorities, how much you're willing to focus on these priorities, what action steps are you going to take towards those priorities, and how focused are you going to be within those actions. And then when you accomplish those three things, then you just build that momentum to where you can just ride that wave of momentum and continue to do it over and over and over again, to where it will allow you to focus on, again, what's important, staying focused on achieving the goal, taking the active steps towards it, like I mentioned, and keeping the progress going to achieve the results that you're trying to accomplish. That's something to think about when cultivating a sense of urgency right there. So I want y'all to remember the 4 elements of urgency: prioritization, focus, action, and momentum. Something to think about that will allow you to remain consistent with a sense of urgency and continue to build off of that in its entirety, regardless of the procrastination that may serve as an obstacle, regardless of the procrastination, like I mentioned, regardless of the impaired decision making, all of those things, because they all play factors. And it all comes down to just balancing yourself out to where you're not burning yourself out in the process. I've learned that lesson the hard way a few times in the past, so I'm telling that to you as well. And speaking of burning out, that's actually going to be the whole concept of this next module that we're going to go into at a later notice. And yes, so remember the importance of prioritization, focus, action, and momentum, and let those 4 elements help you cultivate a sense of urgency. Let it be utilized in your advantage to where you can make the most of it, utilize your time wisely, and be productive. And until the next module, I shall see you soon. Peace and love. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your HFWB CEO, Clifton Pope here, and we're back with the fifth module for my new course, Mastering Consistent Action, Cultivate Urgency for Maximum Productivity. And in this fifth module, we're actually going to be diving into burnout a little bit, right? Because it's a balancing act as far as recognizing the signs of burnout. We're going to educate you a little bit on the physical and the mental side of burnouts. And we're going to go over briefly some sustainable productivity models. That way you can find your balance for long term success. So, with that being said, I would like to dive into the balancing act of burnout. And this is been medically reviewed with this article that I'm about to read from the Mental Health Center that was published on May the 19th, 2025 by Dr. Mark Hamrock. I apologize if I'm saying your name wrong, my kind sir, but he's a chief medical officer, double board certified in general and addiction psychiatry. So he published this article based on the research that I found on burnout. And burnout is so common, right? In today's fast paced society, the pressure of balancing those heavy workloads, meeting deadlines, and juggling multiple responsibilities, it can leave individuals feeling exhausted, disengaged, and mentally drained. Yes, I could definitely relate to that because I've been dealing with a little bit of burnout myself within the last week where I'm trying to shake that off and get back to my regular self right now. But I understand that stress is a normal part of life. Burnout does go beyond regular stress. It's chronic physical and emotional exhaustion brought on by prolonged exposure to just dealing with the hustle, dealing with the grind, dealing with the workplace and everything that comes with it. Now, let's see what the recent research says about burnout in particular. Now, of course, for those who are wondering what burnout is, it's a psychological syndrome that typically arises from chronic stress in the workplace, right? The World Health Organization, or WHO, officially recognized burnout as an occupational phenomenon in 2019, describing it as a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. It's characterized by three main factors: depersonalization, which is basically developing a negative, detached attitude towards work, client, and colleagues, like I mentioned earlier; emotional exhaustion, feeling drained, unable to cope, or overwhelmed. I'm definitely can relate to that. That tends to happen to myself every now and then if I don't keep that in order and keep it in check. Reduced personal accomplishment, feeling ineffective, unproductive, or dissatisfied with one's work. I feel like I deal with that almost at least a couple of times a month myself personally, which is something that I'm working on myself on an everyday basis because burnout can be seen as something that affects only overworked professionals. There's research that shows that it can affect anyone in the field, especially when workplace conditions aren't working out into your advantage. Now, you're probably wondering, hey, what are some signs of burnouts and what to look out for? Well, according to the research here, burnout can develop slowly, often creeping up on individuals who may not recognize its onset until already deeply affected. Now, understanding the signs, like for example, chronic fatigue and exhaustion, that's a good example because according to a 2023 study published in the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology, emotional exhaustion is the strongest predicator of burnout. Now, individuals experiencing burnout may feel like they lack the energy to perform even simple tasks and may struggle to recover from sleep, feeling fatigued even after a full night's rest. Honestly, y'all, I feel like that's me every other day. I feel like so. Then you wonder why I'm trying to still shake off the burnout from the few days ago, right? Then another sign is increased cynicism, again, negative attitude towards the work, your job, your colleague, your clients. A 2020 review published in the Lancet Psychiatry found that individuals who experience burnout begin to feel increasingly detached from their work and may develop a just going through the motions attitude. Man, there's a lot of people who are dealing with that right now, and it happens. It really, really does, and it's very easy to fall into that trap if you're not consciously aware of it, right? Now, this emotional detachment can affect relationships at work, leading to a communication breakdowns and a lack of collaboration. It's like You're over here trying to smell the roses a lot more, but at the same time, you're looking for a casket to lay in just because you feel like you're done with everything, right? And another one that sticks out to me is decreased performance and productivity, which, while burnout sets in, individuals often report feeling less productive and less effective at work. That's been me for the last week. I'm not going to lie to y'all. Research from the American Psychological Association in 2021 showed that burnout was strongly linked to decreased productivity and job dissatisfaction. Tasks that were once easy to complete may now feel overwhelming, and individuals may struggle to meet expectations even when they try hard. I feel like that alone just summarized my whole experience working at Walgreens as a pharmacy technician right there before I became an entrepreneur and became the founder and CEO of Health, Fitness, Wealth Business right there. Now, there are other physical symptoms like, headache, insomnia, digestive issues, chronic pain. And then there's, of course, emotional instability, which could affect your overall mood, your self esteem, all of those things. But we're here in the find what's wrong with it and fix it kind of thing, right? So here's some ways you can help manage and prevent burnout. You can set realistic expectations and boundaries. You got to set clear, realistic expectations for yourself and your workload, right? Because studies have shown that unrealistic job demands are a primary factor in burnout. So that's something to think about. Take regular breaks and disconnect is another thing you can do, because according to a 2021 study in occupational health psychology, taking short breaks throughout the day can improve productivity and prevent burnout. What I like to do personally within a short break, I like to incorporate at least a 15 to 30-minute power nap, if not every day, every other day, to take that regular break and disconnect yourself, because sleep is the best form of rest and recovery last time I checked. Prioritize self-care and mindfulness. That's another thing you could do, going back to, of course, the mindfulness practices and everything, because a 2023 study published it again, the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology, found that mindfulness-based interventions significantly reduce emotional exhaustion, increase well-being among employees. You could do deep breathing, meditation, yoga, which is something that I do with all of my clients on a regular basis myself. There's also the physical self-care, exercise, like I mentioned earlier, sleep, healthy eating, mindful eating, that can boost your resilience and reduce stress on top of that. Cultivate meaning and purpose in your workplace, because again, lack of purpose can contribute to burnout. When work feels meaningless, employees are more than likely to be disengaged. They won't be as interested, leading to that burnout. Because again, a 2022 study in the Lancet Psychiatry found that employees who felt a sense of purpose at work were less likely to experience burnout. Something to think about there. Then, of course, you could seek social support. You could consider professional help. Regardless, if you feel like you're starting to burn out, remember it's essential to act early, because those small changes to your routine, mindset, and your work habits can make a big difference in improving your mental health and your overall well-being. That is a serious thing, because myself personally, I try my best to incorporate everything that I read within this article right here on a regular basis, and it really truly does make a difference in helping you remain productive and finding your balance towards long-term success. Which this is a great segue, because I wanted to touch on some sustainable productivity models real quick within this fifth module. And I wanted to let y'all know that understanding where true productivity fits in within all of this, because it's more than just the business outcome of it. Recent increases in productivity have led to a corresponding increase in employee burnout or disengagement, or just unsustainable. Now, there's a lot of assumptions that kind of go into that, because companies are better at measuring what workers accomplish rather than employee well-being and what goes into the results and the output and all these things. But honestly, when you really kind of break down as far as how we could continue to be like more productive in anything, it comes down to, this new model I found within this MIT Management Sloan School's website as far as how to implement a new model of productivity measurements. Because there's three focal points it focuses on: trust, which is a two-way mechanism in which leaders trust employees to fulfill their roles and employees provide the support and space employees need to do their work. There's empowerment, which enables managers and employees to best manage their time to achieve the right business outcomes, but also to raise their hand if they need help. And accountability, ensuring that employees assume responsibility for completing their work while managers focus on their team's growth and development while addressing needs that arise. Now, when I look at as far as productivity, it's like that fine balancing act that I was talking about earlier. We got to find that productivity between balance, between burnout and productivity. Because when we find a balance, I feel like between the two, I feel like that's how we can make the case for sustainable productivity. And if you look at it from the inputs standpoint, or excuse me, if you don't look at the inputs, but you only look at the outputs, you put sustainability and value at risk when it needs to be the other way around. But overall, I feel like when you adopt these three focal points of trust, empowerment, and accountability, as far as within yourself, if you're a business owner or an entrepreneur, or if you're an employee applying those things where your job is and with your current workplace, you'll have no problem creating those sustainable productivity models and finding your balance for long-term success and playing the delayed gratification game versus the instant gratification game. And I feel like when you do that on top of avoiding burnout, that is how you could sustain consistent actions and harness a potential sense of urgency to boost productivity and achieve goals efficiently. And that right there is the explanation for the overall fifth module right here. As we go into the next module, we're going to talk about some real life application and strategies and dive into a little bit of case studies of very successful people. You'd be surprised on who you could learn from. Until next time, let's stay consistent on top of our commitment, and let's stay motivated on top of our discipline. Peace and love, y'all. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your HFWB CEO Clifton Pope here, and we are back with module number 6 of the course title here: Mastering Consistent Action and Cultivating Urgency for Maximum Productivity, y'all. And again, we're going to continue to empower every one of you individuals to sustain consistent actions and harness a potential sense of urgency to boost productivity and achieve goals efficiently based on one of my trademark books, Consistency with a Sense of Urgency, that was released back in 2024. Because we all could use a little bit of better habits as far as developing, more consistency on top of your commitment. So I figured for this sixth module, we're going to dive into some real life applications and strategies. And we're going to dive into some case studies of some successful people that you may be very familiar with. Because let's be honest, according to this website here on GaleoCamps.com, where I found very interesting that fits this entirely, we think that kids who learn to explore and fail with courage are happier and more creative and more confident when faced with life's challenges. Well, that could be the case, but you could also look at it like this: the essence of innovation is trial and unavoidable errors that gets you closer to achieving your end game goal. In fact, some of the most successful people in the world had to overcome failure at some point in their lives. Rather than giving up and allowing their failures to define them, they use setbacks as motivation to make a lasting impact in their field. I mean, you're familiar with some of these innovators. I mean, Oprah Winfrey, J.K. Rowling, George Lucas, Michael Jordan, Thomas Edison. Those are 5 people who I could think of who turned their quote unquote famous failures into their biggest success. I mean, look at what happened with Oprah Winfrey. I mean, she worked on a failed news show, was demoted from a primetime co-anchor. However, Her empathetic style, Oprah Winfrey at the time, later found traction and she gained her own talk show, which we all know skyrocketed her to international success. I mean, who doesn't know about the Oprah Winfrey show or who didn't know about it at that particular time, especially with a quarter century of success? And then she wind up launching her own network, which was written off as a failure by many initially, and it also struggled to build viewership. But by making some adjustments and changes, such as redesigning programming, collaborating with other creators, she turned things around. The Oprah Winfrey Network is still here to this very day. Moral of the story is she took her setback and turned it into a path of success based off of the lessons that she learned within the setbacks. And, they were stepping stones angling towards a different direction as well. Here's another one that you could think of. I mean, there is J.K. Rowling. I mean, you got to look at J.K. Rowling, who's basically the Queen of England. I mean, she's also known for writing the Harry Potter books and everything, because in J.K. Rowling, she never gave up on her dream to publish a novel, a true visionary. She believed that she could turn her vision into a reality and continue to believe herself despite receiving dozens of rejection letters from publishers and everything. I mean, how did it come to a fairy tale ending? I mean, she got rejected by multiple publishers and still winded up creating some of the best-selling books of all time within the Harry Potter books, because failure helped her discover that she had a strong will and discipline, and determination pulled her through tough times, and basically a job at Amnesty International drove home the importance of imagination and empathy. And then she went on to pen an epic story about a boy wizard whose most remarkable trait is his bravery, and the rest is magical history. Who doesn't know the story of Harry Potter? I mean, I'm not personally into Harry Potter like that, but I know people who are into it like that. And hey, it came from, the benefits of failure from J.K. Rowling. And then you got to look at it. You got to look at George Lucas. For those who don't know, George Lucas he's pretty much the person who created the Star Wars movies that became blockbuster hits. But shooting the movie was mirrored with difficulties and fell behind schedule. As a matter of fact, some people who worked for George Lucas, as far as the cast and the crew, they didn't take the movie seriously because they've never seen anything like it before. The first edit was a disaster. 40% of it didn't make it to the final cut. A rough cut was screened to a number of Lucas's director friends, and it garnished mostly negative reviews, and he was under immense pressure to deliver it, but he suffered health problems as a result. But that didn't stop him from realizing his vision and not allowing those negative opinions of others to stop him from producing one of the most influential films of all times. Because we all know about Star Wars and how it went to become a worldwide phenomenon and birth a new motion picture genre. How's that for game changing? Look at Michael Jordan. We all know who Michael Jordan is. As a matter of fact, I got a picture behind me in my office with Michael Jordan, because for me personally, he's pretty much the greatest basketball player of all time. I would make an argument between him and Kobe Bryant and LeBron, but I would say Jordan most importantly, because it all started with that. I mean, look at Michael Jordan. I mean, a lot of people don't know this about Michael Jordan. He got cut from his high school basketball team, and we all know what happened from there. The rest was history. He went on to become probably the greatest basketball player of all time, had success on every single level, won a national championship with North Carolina, won 6 titles with the Bulls, won his gold medals. Pretty much, he was undefeated in championships for that matter. And overall, he also had a little bit of success as well as an owner as well, even though they had the worst record and worst ever season in NBA history, the Charlotte Bobcats at the time. But Jordan did turn things around and worked hard designing, testing, and redesigning solutions that put the team in position to succeed. And, the Bobcats, they eventually got back to their winning ways, kind of, sort of, even though it didn't lead to playoff success or championships, but at least they had winning records due to Michael Jordan's influence. Oh, and then here's a very famous one. Thomas Edison. A lot of people don't realize this. Before Thomas Edison, with the help of others, inventing the light bulb, he literally had 1,000 patents and was often considered as the first celebrity entrepreneur. So it's like he literally, you could say that he failed 1,000 times, but he was basically inventing the light bulb with 1,000 steps. So one thing that I could take of all of these case studies of all these successful people, whether it's Oprah Winfrey, whether it's George Lucas, whether it's J.K. Rowling, Michael Jordan, Thomas Edison, all of those people, from what I could tell, they had in common, they used their failures and their setbacks as stepping stones and allowing themselves to stay motivated, determined, and inspired, and not losing track of the mission and the vision and the sense of purpose that they've been placed on this earth to do. And that allowed them to be some of the most successful innovators of all time. And I feel like we could definitely learn a thing or two from Oprah Winfrey, from George Lucas, from J.K. Rowling, from Thomas Edison, and from the great Michael Jordan, just as from the purpose of just, in order to succeed, you must learn how to fail first, like the great Michael Jordan quote he said. And he actually told Shaquille O'Neal that, and that sticks with me still to this very day. I mean, that is true. You gotta go through the worst of times in order to experience the best of times, because that's what's going to prepare you and allow you to become stronger, tougher, and more resilient, and allow you to feel more whole and complete from within. It's kind of like the hero's journey, and like Carl Jung talks about, it's like going from the dark and rediscovering yourself and going through a rebirth process in the dark and bringing it to the light, to where it could be known, to where you could achieve your own personal crown. From caves to crowns, it's about to go down without a doubt. So I want you to kind of apply kind of what you feel like you could learn from Oprah Winfrey, George Lucas, J.K. Rowling, Thomas Edison, and Michael Jordan. I want you to apply their stories into whatever your journey, your mission, your sense of purpose is, and see how you could tailor your own strategy to fit your own personal needs. That way, you could continue to simply, what I like to call, grow through what you go through. Because don't get it twisted, there's always room for improvement, and you're gonna make mistakes. That's just how it is. But it's a matter of learning from those mistakes. That way, you could come out of it a better version of yourself, to where you could continue to achieve the results you seek and accomplish the goals that you set. And last but not least, that puts us into our final module as far as building your own personal consistency plan, which we're going to get into to close things out in particular. I thank y'all for sticking along for the ride thus far. I'm grateful for it, and may you continue to remain committed and consistent within your vision, mission, and sense of purpose. We'll see you on the 7th and final module, y'all. Peace and love. And just like that, we are back for the final module, module number 7. Of course, this is yours truly, your HFWB CEO, Clifton Pope here, bringing to you the Mastering Consistent Action, Cultivate Urgency for Maximum Productivity. Man, it's basically been designed again to empower each of you individuals tuning in to sustain consistent actions and harness a potential sense of urgency to boost productivity and achieve goals efficiently, without a doubt. We covered everything from what is consistency and why it matters, to understanding distinguishing productive urgency from destructive stress. We talked about mindset and motivation, and cultivating the right mindset and developing a mindset conducive to consistency. We talked about inner motivational techniques and finding and keeping your personal why. We touched on setting SMART goals, skills and habits for consistency, the science behind it. We talked about cultivating a sense of urgency based on the 4 elements of urgency: prioritization, focus, action, and momentum. We talked about creating like a time sensitive environment and to accelerate action. We talked about balancing act, avoiding burnout, and sustainable productivity models to help balance your long term success. And we even dived into some real life applications and strategies and case studies of successful people, from individuals like Oprah Winfrey, J.K. Rowling, George Lucas, Thomas Edison, and great Michael Jordan, because I have a picture of him right behind me. And now we're about to build your personal consistency plan and give you the tools needed to craft your own actionable blueprint and monitor your progress and adjustments, and of course, put together your future with consistency and urgency. So here we go. This is based off of some research that I found from a National Association for Music Education blog, and was put together by Miss Lori Schwartz Rochelle. And she had a really great quote to start off this particular article, because it says that consistency is a key element, and without it, which a leader is incapable of, without consistency, which a leader is incapable of getting respect, success, or even developing confidence in others. Quote by Daniel Transit. And honestly, I've been saying this from the start. Consistency is key, which is a phrase that is meant to be dedicated and focused on a goal and to remain committed to a task or habit. Consistency is one of the most important factors when achieving long term success, whether it's building habits and routines, developing skills, or maintaining relationships, or even just showing up regularly or acting similarly makes a huge difference in your success and the success of those who you love, serve, and lead. Basically, consistency is the key to turning goals into lasting habits in ourselves or others. Now, here are the 5 key changes needed for consistency, and I want y'all to really remember this. You got to start small and then crescendo. Here's a good way to look at this. Think of the tale of the tortoise and the hare, where slow and steady won the race. The tortoise represented patience and hard work, while the hare represented arrogance and carelessness. The hare was so cocky that he decided to take a nap before finishing the race. Meanwhile, the tortoise didn't say a word. He simply kept moving forward with small steps. The tortoise passed the sleeping hare and won the race. Moral of the story: focus on one area or goal at a time and then increase your intensity. Model this same process for those you love, serve, or lead, and consistency will definitely be in your lap before you know it. You got to create a routine by setting specific goals, going back to the SMART goals that I talked about earlier. Here's a good example of this. You got to make your goals clear and measurable, like I talked about in the SMART goals. Here's a good example, going back to the weightlifting analogy, since I am an ISA certified personal trainer. If you hope to get in shape, then create a routine of lifting weights for 20 minutes every other day, or walking 30 minutes each day. If you want to be healthier, swap your chips for protein, or eat a fruit or vegetable with every meal. If you hope to engage your mind more, then read 10 pages most days, or set a timer and read for 20 minutes each night. Make a specific goal and include it in your daily routine. Number 3, track your progress and celebrate it. Ways you could do that: use a journal, app, or calendar to check off complete tasks and celebrate wins along the way. It's like I tell my clients this all the time. Focus on the journey versus the destination. Focus on the stepping stones and the milestone achievements along the way. That way you can recognize these things, reward yourself in the process, and you can reward others for the small milestones. And that's going to keep your motivation high, y'all, and help everyone to stay excited about the goals. You got to be flexible. Flexibility is the key, because life can throw curveballs for you and for those who love, serve, and lead. But goals may need to be adjusted. You may have to adjust and adapt as possible. But don't be afraid to reevaluate yourself and adapt the goals if necessary. Because the key is to stay committed, and as consistent as you can, even if the path shifts a bit. It's not about perfection, y'all. It's about persistence. Consistency over perfection every single time. Instead of using the word perfect as an adjective or noun, consider the word master or something similar, which means to acquire knowledge, gain control, and overcome the obstacles that may be standing in your way. Learn, adapt, and conquer. And obviously, surround yourself with support, right? You know, tell a friend or family member about it. Join an online community if that's your thing. Allow others to help you remain consistent. And accountability and encouragement from others can boost your commitment and keep you motivated. It's kind of what I do as an ISA certified personal trainer, nutritionist, exercise transformation specialist, and strength and conditioning coach. You need a little boost of motivation within those areas, reach out to me. We can dive into that a little bit. But regardless, the support from others will help you and it'll help them grow at the same time. So, those are 5 key things, key changes that are needed for consistency. Start small, then crescendo. Create a routine by setting specific goals, smart goals, that is. Track your progress and celebrate it. Stay flexible, y'all, and surround yourself with support. Now, when you apply a mindset of all of those things along with steady progress, you'll build the momentum necessary that you need to make these lasting changes. And that comes down to more consistency, accountability, and growth, which are 3 keys to unlocking lasting change. Because again, consistency is about doing something regularly, regardless of the external factors or initial challenges. It's the act of showing up and putting in the effort steadily over time, even when results are immediate. Small actions taken consistency lead to bigger results. It leads to momentum being built. Habits grow stronger, making it more likely that you and those you love, serve, or lead will overcome obstacles and continue even when motivation isn't there. Accountability, taking responsibility for your actions, decisions, and progress. It often involves being answerable to yourself or someone else, such as a mentor, coach, or peer. Whether you're tracking your own progress or the progress of others or know someone is tracking it, you're more likely to stay committed. Accountability will basically reinforce the commitment and serve as a powerful motivator to stay on track, which will lead to growth, which will lead to improvement, or development that occurs as a result of consistent effort and accountability. Because let's not get it twisted, y'all. Growth can occur in knowledge, skills, emotional intelligence, your own health, relationship, finances, you name it. Growth can be applied to anything within the course of your life. Ask this simple question right here, y'all. How are we making key changes to grow? That alone can be your guiding force. Now, let me tell y'all something. When consistency, accountability, and growth are aligned as one, I'm telling you, the alignment creates a powerful feedback loop that drives personal transformation, allowing key changes to be made. So let me ask you this question. How are you and those you love, serve, or lead making key changes to be more consistent? That's something that we could think about in regards to putting together our own consistency plan, without a doubt. That is something we could think about with strategies for self-evaluation and course adjustments. That's what we could think about when crafting our own actionable blueprint to achieving our own end game that we are looking to achieve within the course of our lives. Because we all have something that we're trying to commit to at the end of the day. It's just a matter of just how consistent are we going to be towards it. How much are we going to hold ourselves accountable or have others hold ourselves accountable for? How much are we willing to grow through what we go through, to learn from our mistakes and find room for improvement and continue to evolve physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and financially into the best version of ourselves that we could be? That right there is what consistency for me is all about. And that's kind of what I talk about in my book, Consistency with a Sense of Urgency, that you could get on Amazon. Because it comes down to this, y'all. Consistency, accountability, and growth will allow a personal transformation to take place in your health, in your wealth, and in your knowledge of yourself when it's all said and done. So I want to thank y'all for tuning in to the consistency course, courtesy of yours truly, Clifton Pope, HFWB. And I hope and pray that each and every person listening to these modules that I was able to put together master consistent action. I hope y'all cultivate your own urgency. I hope y'all cultivate your own maximum productivity. Sustain those consistent actions, y'all. Harness a potential sense of urgency. Let's boost our productivity. Let's achieve our goals efficiently. And I hope that this will help you understand the psychological and practical tools to develop consistency. I hope that the techniques that were presented in this course here instill a sense of urgency without causing any burnout. And I pray that you apply these strategies in your daily life. That way you can enhance your personal and professional productivity. Again, this is yours truly, Clifton Pope, HFWB CEO, and I encourage y'all to stay healthy, wealthy, and blessed. Consistency with a sense of urgency course has officially come to a close. Peace, love, positive vibrations, and until the next course, y'all, stay strong, remain committed, remain consistent, hold yourself accountable, and have others do that for you as well, and continue to grow through what you go through. Peace and love, y'all.